What's up, Sir Hunt's Reviews listeners? I'm Mark. This is Sir Hunt's Reviews. Now, my videos recently have been I like to call it expanding types of content, whatever the fuck. In this video, I'm going to discuss a little book called The World of Ice and Fire. It's going to be more like my live stream / podcast format, and I'm just going to go through and talk about things that I find interesting. Just so happens that we're starting with Braavos, because, you know, it's mentioned in the show, and my knowledge on it isn't that great, so part of what I'm doing in these videos is sometimes going over shit that I already know, but mostly reinvigorating my love for Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire. Part of not making videos makes me kind of not necessarily not as interested in the world, but just sort of less entertained by it. So in order to prep for House of the Dragon, in order to prep for all of the future Game of Thrones prequels, we're gonna go through World of Ice and Fire. We're gonna go through Winds of Winter when it gets here eventually. We're gonna go through the previous 5 Game of Thrones books. I'm gonna go through all of the lore. So if you enjoy that and you want to, hop on this exploratory ride of expanding our content and my brand, make sure you subscribe. And then this is the most important part. If you've already subscribed and you slap a like, the like goes 3. If you've already done those 2 things, the third thing, this is the most important part. Turn your notifications all the way on. So that way, you'll get an alert every single time I drop a video throughout the wait for House of the Dragon Season 1, throughout the wait for any more Song of Ice and Fire / Game of Thrones content that HBO is going to put out, or as it's known on this channel, at the Long Night. Alright, so jumping right into it, and mind you, these, I'm reading directly from A World of Ice and Fire on page 271. This is Braavos. At the far northwestern corner of Essos, where the Shivering Sea and the Narrow Sea come together, the free city of Braavos stands upon its famed 100 Isles, amidst the shallow brackish waters of a fog-shrouded lagoon. The youngest of the 9 free cities, Braavos is also the wealthiest, and in all likelihood, the most powerful. Originally founded by escaped slaves, its humble beginnings were rooted in nothing more than a desire to be free. For a great part of its early history, its secret status made it of little consequence to the wider world. But in time it grew, eventually emerging as a power almost without rival. Neither prince nor king commands in Braavos, where the rule belongs to the Sea Lord, chosen by the city's magisters and keyholders from amongst the citizenry, citizenry? I don't fucking know. Citizenry, by a process as convoluted as it is arcane. From his vast waterside palace, the Sea Lord commands a fleet of warships second to none, and a mercantile fleet whose purple hulls and purple sails have become a common sight throughout the known world. So basically what it's saying is Braavos, was obviously founded by slaves, and I'm sure in the beginning wanted to keep any sort of one ruling person out of a position of power because those slaves are coming from lands that are like that. But eventually there is a Sea Lord that controls Braavos, and they're basically a king. For lack of a better word, they're fucking king. Whoever's the Sea Lord of Braavos is, basically the same thing. Braavos was founded by fugitives from a large convoy of slave ships on its way from Valyria to a newly established colony in Sothrios, who rose in a bloody rebellion, seized control of the ships on which they were being transported, and fled to the far ends of the earth to escape their erstwhile masters. Knowing they would be hunted, the slaves turned away from their intended destination and sailed north instead of south, seeking a refuge as far from Valyria and her vengeance as could be found. Bravosi histories claim that a group of slave women from the distant lands of the Jogosnai prophesied where they would find shelter. In a distant lagoon behind a wall of pine-clad hills and sea stones, where the frequent fogs would help to hide the refugees from the eyes of dragon riders passing overhead. And so it proved. These women were priestesses called moon singers, and to this day, the Temple of Moon Singers is the greatest in Braavos. So that's kind of self-explanatory. You don't really need to break that down. But basically, it was prophesied that those slaves that escaped from the Valyrian ships would find a place to hide away, and that being Braavos. Braavos is like covered in fog, so anybody who's riding above on a dragon can't see those motherfuckers. Since the escaped slaves came from many lands and held many faiths, the founders of Braavos created a place where all gods were given their due and decreed that none would ever be made paramount over another. There were a diverse people, whose numbers included Andals, Summer Islanders, Giscari, Nathi, Rhaenyra, Ibonese, Sarnori, even debtors and criminals of pure Valyrian blood. Some had been trained in arms to serve as guardmen and slave soldiers, and others were bed slaves, whose art was the giving of pleasure. I wonder who he's referring to there. Probably the whores. There were many sorts of household slaves amongst them: tutors, nursemaids, cooks, grooms, and stewards. Others were skilled craftsmen: carpenters, armorers, masons, and weavers. Some were fishermen, some field hands, some galley slaves, many common laborers. The new freedmen spoke many tongues, so their tongue of their late masters, Valyrian, became their common tongue. So basically, that I think what's sort of note there is that, you know, we sort of see this on the Game of Thrones show, which is that the people in Braavos, because they're from all over the world and because they didn't want someone else's faith to be more prominent over another one's, they allowed everyone equal amounts of worship. So when Arya goes to the House of Black and White and she sees northern gods there, that's what that's referencing. It's showing you directly that, you know, in Braavos, no man has power over no other man, or at least they try to keep it that way, especially when it comes to faith, which is one of the driving factors during this time in this make-believe land, and then during a similar time in our own history. And even today, faith is like the largest thing that drives people. Religion and shit, it causes great things, but it also causes war and people to hate each other. So Braavos tried to establish a pace. I think Braavos is a direct sort of mirroring of ancient Rome. Rome was kind of founded by slaves. You could come to Rome as a slave and become a citizen of Rome, you know, just by paying your dues. And obviously Rome allowed, you know, many people with many different ethnicities to come in. Mostly there was a lot of skilled laborers and common folk, but, you know, if you had value, you were treated as such. Whereas most of the other cities during that time when ancient Rome was around, that wasn't the case. So Rome was probably a destination for a lot of people who either escaped their captor or were trying to go start a new life, much like Braavos in A Song of Ice and Fire. I talk so much I forget where I was. And because they had risked their lives in the name of freedom, the mothers and fathers of the new city vowed that no man, woman, or child in Braavos should ever be a slave, a thrall, or a bondsman. This is the first law of Braavos, engraved in stone on the arch that spans the long canal. From that day to this, the Sea Lords of Braavos have opposed slavery in all forms and have fought many a war against slavers and their allies. The lagoon where the fugitives found refuge seemed a drear and uninviting place of mudflats, tidal shallows, and salt marshes at first glance. But it was well hidden behind outlying lands and sea stacks, and oft-cloaked even from above by fog. Moreover, its brackish waters were rich with fish and shellfish of all sorts. The sheltering lands were thickly forested, and iron, tin, lead, slate, and other useful materials could be found nearby on mainland Essos. More crucially, the lagoon was remote and little visited. Though the escaped slaves were weary of flight, most of all they feared recapture. Undiscovered, Braavos grew and prospered. Farms, homes, and temples sprouted across the low-lying islands, whilst fishermen harvested the bounty of the great lagoon in the seas beyond. Amongst the other shellfish the Braavosi discovered was a certain sea snail, akin to those that had made Tyrosh and its dyes rich and famous. The snail yielded a dark purple dye. To change the look of their stolen ships, Braavosi captains dyed their sails this color whenever they sailed beyond the lagoon, taking care to avoid Valyrian ships and cities wherever possible. The Braavosi began to trade with Ib and later with the Seven Kingdoms. For a long while, however, Braavosi merchant ships carried false charts and practiced in artful deceit when questioned about their home port. Thus, for more than a century, Braavos was known as a secret city. Sea Lord Uthero Zalene put an end to that secrecy, sending forth the ships to every corner of the world to proclaim the existence and location of Braavos, and invite men of all nations to celebrate the 111th festival of the city's founding. By that time, all of the original escaped slaves were dead, along with their former masters. Even so, Uthero had sent envoys from the Iron Bank to Valyria several years prior to clear the way for what became known as the uncloaking or the unmasking of Uthero. The Dragon Lords proved to have little interest in the descendants of slaves who had escaped a century before, and the Iron Bank paid handsome settlements to the grandchildren of those men whose ships the founders had seized and sailed away, whilst refusing to pay for the value of the slaves themselves. So that's interesting. That last part is basically saying, like, even though the Braavosi people, the original slaves that founded the city, did deceitful things like steal ships and then change the color, and then when they were questioned by the sea police, they would say, hey, we're not from Braavos, we're from such and such. We're not from that port that you're talking about. Eventually, once all those original founding members died, one of the Sea Lords who comes up, this Uthero dude, basically says, like, look, it's time for us to become part of the world like Wakanda. You know what I mean? Like in Black Panther, there's a debate on whether they should take Wakanda to help the rest of the world, because it would obviously be exploited. But this is very much like that. This dude's like, basically, look, let me cover my bases first. Let me send an envoy. I'm going to send some money, basically. I'm going to send the Iron Bank over there and pay these motherfuckers some money so they don't give a shit about us. Obviously, we're descendants of slaves. We're not, something they need to be worried about. So now it's time to unmask and allow Braavos to prosper even more. Thus was accord achieved. The anniversary of the uncloaking is celebrated every year in Braavos with 10 days of feasting and masked revelry, a festival like none others in all the known world, culminating at midnight on the 10th day, when the Titan roars and tens of thousands of revelers and celebrants remove their masks as one. Despite its humble origins, Braavos has not only become the wealthiest of the free cities, but also one of the most impregnable. Volantis may have its black walls, but Braavos has a wall of ships such as no other city in the world possesses. Lomas Longstrider marveled at the Titan of Braavos, the great fortress of stone and bronze in the shape of a warrior that bestrides the main entrance into the lagoon. Let me swallow all this fucking spit. But the true wonder is the arsenal. There, one of the purple-hulled war galleys of Braavos can be built in a day. All the vessels are constructed following the same design, so that all the many parts can be prepared in advance, and skilled shipbuilders work upon different sections of the vessel simultaneously to hasten the labor. To organize such a feat of engineering is unprecedented. One need only look at the raucous, confused construction in the shipyards of Old Town to see the truth of this. Now, that's two things of note there that's interesting. Obviously, Arya saw the Titan of Braavos. I think it was season 5 she goes there. I can't even remember. But also, you remember when a certain Euron Greyjoy was like, hey, give me 100 ships, cut all the timber off this island that has so many fucking trees and make me ships. Maybe he used the Braavosi method. You don't know. It's not something that could be, repeated, but who knows? That was my little bit on that. Continuing on here. It would be folly, however, not to give the Titan its due. With his proud head and fiery eyes looming close to 400 feet above the sea, the Titan is a fortress of a type never seen before. Cast in the form of a huge giant straddling two seamounts, the Titan's legs and lower torso are black granite. Originally a natural stone archway carved and shaped by 3 generations of sculptors and stonemasons and wrapped into a pleated bronze skirt above the waist. The Colossus is bronze with green dyed hemp for hair. Oh shit, they got weed in Westeros. Smoke up 420, nigga. 420, dude. 420, where you smoking at, hemp? I'm just kidding. I remember I told a buddy of mine who makes YouTube videos that they smoked weed in Lord of the Rings. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, gilly weed. Gandalf even does it in the movie. Sorry. But basically, just stopping right there since I already stopped. This is the Colossus of Rhodes. This is that giant, or inspired by the Colossus of Rhodes, which was like this giant Roman statue that could be seen around for miles and miles. We've only got ruins of it today, but they did the math, and this fucking thing was huge. And, George stepped one up by putting it on 2 mountains that guard the way to the city. So that's pretty fucking awesome. When seen from sea for the first time, the Titan is a sight terrifying to behold. His eyes are huge bacon fries. His eyes are huge bacon fries, lighting the way for returning ships back inside the lagoon. Within his bronze armor are halls and chambers, murder holes and arrow slits that any vessel that dared to force the passage would surely be destroyed. Enemy ships can easily be steered onto the rocks by the watchmen inside the Titan, and stones and pots of burning pitch can be dropped onto the decks of any that attempt to pass between the Titan's legs without leave. This has seldom been necessary, however. Not since the Century of Blood has an army been so rash as to attempt to provoke the Titan's wrath. And then we're going to the Iron Bank and all that good stuff. But you know what? I'm starting to get a little bit tired of Braavos. We talked about the biggest, aside from the Iron Bank, we talked about the how the city was founded, how they believe in, free religion there, and how they defend themselves. And the Titan of Braavos is honestly the most marvelous thing. But I've got a few other pages earmarked here, and we don't really know where we're going in this video. That's the benefit of keeping these long and live. Well, it's not live, but, pre-recorded. All one take. Let's talk about Asshai by the Shadow, because that place is fucking creepy. And so we come nearly to the end of the world. Or at least the end of our knowledge. Easternmost and southernmost of the great cities of the known world, the ancient port of Asshai stands at the end of a long wedge of land, on the point where the Jade Sea meets the Saffron Straits. Its origins are lost in the midst of time. Even the Asshai do not claim to know who built their city. They will say only that a city has stood here since the world began, and will stand here until it ends. Few places in the known world are as remote as Asshai, and fewer are as forbidding. Travelers tell us that the city is built entirely of black stone. Halls, hovels, temples, palaces, streets, walls, bazaars. Some say as well that the stone of Asshai has a greasy, unpleasant feel to it, and that it seems to drink the light, dimming tapers and torches and hearth fires alike. The nights are very black in Asshai. All agree, and even the brightest days of summer are somehow gray and gloomy. Asshai is a large city, sprawling out for leagues on both banks of the Black River Ash. Beyond its enormous land walls is ground enough for Volantis, Karth, and King's Landing to stand side by side and still have room for Old Town. Yet the population of Asshai is no greater than that of a good-sized market town. By night, the streets are deserted, and only one building in 10 shows a light. Even at the height of day, there are no crowds to be seen, no tradesmen shouting their wares in noisy markets, no women gossiping at a well. Those who walk the streets of Asshai are masked and veiled, and have a furtive air about them. Oft as not, they walk alone, or ride in palanquins of ebony and iron, hidden behind dark curtains and borne through the dark streets upon the backs of slaves. And there are no children in Asshai. Despite its forbidding aspects, Asshai by the Shadow has for many centuries been a thriving port where ships from all over the known world come to trade, crossing vast and stormy seas. Most arrive laden with foodstuffs and wine, for beyond the walls of Asshai little grows in ghost grass whose glassy glowing stalks are inedible. It is not for the food. I don't know what happened. My brain just switches. I can't read. If not for the food brought in from across the sea, the Asshai would have starved. The ships bring casks of fresh water, too. The waters of the ash glisten black beneath the noonday sun and glimmer with a pale green phosphorescence by night. And such fish as swim in the river are blind and twisted, so deformed and hideous to look upon that only fools and shadowbinders will eat their flesh. Every land beneath the sun has need of fruits and grains and vegetables, so one might ask why any mariner would sail to the ends of the earth when he might easily sell his cargo to markets closer to home. The answer is gold. Beyond the walls of Asshai, food is scarce, but gold and gems are common. Though some will say that the gold of the Shadowland is as unhealthy in its own way as the fruits that grow there. The ships come, nonetheless, for gold, for gems, and for other treasures, for certain things spoken of only in whispers. Things that cannot be found anywhere upon the earth save in the black bazaars of Asshai. So obviously you can tell from just a little bit that I read about Asshai, this place is a mystery. We never got to see it on the TV show, but Melisandre is from there. She practices shadow binding. Apparently when she was in Asshai, she's the only one that would eat those blind and twisted fish, or at least her clan of, or her group, her priestess group, you know, the red priestesses are from there. So they obviously practice some sort of necromancy. The red priestess is from there. So her powers of, shadow binding and resurrecting the dead probably hail from Asshai, from Asshai originally. I do know that this new series, House of the Dragon, the chances of it touching anything with Asshai are very few and none. But a lot of these prequels that we have coming out, like maybe Nymeria and 10,000 Ships, or maybe if they're doing Empire of Ash, which is supposed to be about the fall of Valyria, those are the types of shows that I expect to touch on Asshai. You know, honestly, from what I just read, you could probably make a prequel series on Asshai by itself, but the land is just something crazy happened there, and the land itself is like basically cursed, if you believe in that sort of thing in Martin's world. So that's what he's trying to get across, and describing all of the different aspects and the people that come from there, what they're like, and how, King's Landing is basically this big bustling city. Yes, it smells like shit. Yes, a lot of the people there are shit, but it's still this big bustling city. So it makes sense why traders would travel to King's Landing to sell their wares, even though it's a terrible place to be. But Asshai there's no really reason to go there because it's so fucking terrible aside from gold. So that's really what Martin's getting across, is like, these people can't grow anything in their land. They obviously need food. They need water. So traders and sailors are going to come there and sell it to them. But the only reason being is probably because they pay top dollar for that shit. Obviously, you could, like it's mentioned, you could sell your wares anywhere because people need food and all that shit anywhere. But something about Asshai attracts the people, and that's mainly that gold and gems are common there. So that means they probably pay top dollar for those wares. The Dark City by the Shadow is a city steeped in sorcery. Warlocks, wizards, alchemists, moonsingers, red priests, black alchemists, necromancers, aeromancers, pyromancers, blood mages, torturers, inquisitors, poisoners, gods' wives, nightwalkers, shape changers, worshippers of the black goat and the pale child and the lion knight, all find welcome in Asshai by the Shadow, where nothing is forbidden. Here they are free to practice their spells without restraint or censor, conduct their obscene rites, and fornicate with demons if that is what they desire. Most sinister of all sorcerers of Asshai are the shadowbinders, Melisandre, whose lacquered masks hide their face from the eyes of gods and men. They alone dare to go upriver past the walls of Asshai into the heart of darkness. On its way from the mountains of Morn to the sea, Ash runs hollowing through a narrow cleft in the mountains, between towering cliffs so steep and close that the river is perpetually in shadow, save for a few moments at midday when the sun is at its zenith. In the caves that pockmark in the cliffs, demons and dragons and worse make their lairs. The farther from the city one goes, the more hideous and twisted these creatures become, until at last one stands at the door of Stegai, the corpse city, the shadow's heart, where even the shadowbinders fear to tread, or so the stories say. Is there any truth to those grim fables brought back from the land, or from the end of the earth by singers and sailors and dabblers in sorcery? Who can say? Lomas Longstrider never saw Asshai by the Shadow. Even the sea snake never sailed so far. Those who did have not returned to tell us their tales. Until they do, Asshai and the Shadowlands and whatever lands and seas might be beyond them must remain a closed book to wise men and kings alike. There's always more to know, more to see, more to learn. The world is vast and wondrous, strange, and there are many things beneath the stars that even the archmasters of the Citadel can dream. And that's basically the end of World of Ice and Fire. And now, one thing of note is that Euron is a fucking liar, but he claims to have been to Asshai. And he's one of the characters in the main A Song of Ice and Fire series, and a lot of the things that he does are fucking creepy. He drinks a certain thing that it gives him like premonitions, shade of the evening, turns his lips blue. A lot of the claims that he makes are fucking salacious, but if he has been to Asshai from the description that we were given and returned successfully, it's very well possible that certain things that Euron claims he can do in certain I guess, character arcs that he's setting himself up to do are going to be, they might be possible. George leaves this city a mystery. If you want to, like, put, like, a science backdrop to it, maybe at one point, Asshai was, like, the best place to be. It was, like, the most, maybe the most technologically advanced society in Essos, and, you know, obviously, other, like, you know, the shit that was going on in Westeros wasn't nowhere near as advanced. It seems like civilization started in Essos and then, you know, slowly went over to Westeros, because Westeros at one point was mostly like mythical creatures, right? If you believe the history books, children of the forest and that such. But if you want to think that civilization started in Essos, it could have started with Asshai, and Asshai being one of the oldest places, and you know, everybody in Asshai saying that, you know, this city has been around since before the beginning of time. It's been here since the beginning. If that's the place, maybe at one point it was like the cultural and the information, technology, everything that's advanced in the world of Planetos was going on at Asshai, and then obviously when something reaches its peak, when something reaches its zenith, it's just got to fall. And maybe that's what happened, and Asshai has been falling the longest, so they realized that making rules and allowing certain shit to go on just isn't worth the fight. So maybe like the world's evil was drawn there at one point because there was like a power vacuum. We don't really know. Most of the shit that deals with Asshai is like the dark magic. It's interesting that, you know, it's mentioned that the shadowbinders are the only ones that go outside the city, and there's a certain point they won't go past the corpse city. They're like, nah, I ain't fucking with that part. So obviously, you know, the narrator mentions, like, we don't really know. No one has been to Asshai and back. Lomas Longstrider, who mapped a bunch of the world, never went there. It even mentions Corlys the Sea Snake, who is going to be in House of the fucking Dragon, this new series. It's mentioned that he didn't even go by there. That's I guess that's another way they could explore more of the world, is with the Sea Snake spin-off sequel that they're supposedly working or developing or some shit. We do have some of the younger actresses from House of the Dragon, Rhaenyra and Alicent, have younger actresses that are playing versions of them, so maybe they could be in the Sea Snake show, or potentially just they're setting up a universe that's going to be like inside of the House of the Dragon, at least it seems like. So maybe when the Sea Snake is traveling around, we could see more of the world then. I do think it's interesting that George has a place so mysterious, and then when given the chance to expand on it, he does expand on it, but still leaves a shit ton of mystery. He kind of, in my opinion, is leaving that up so that, you know, people like me and you who read the books, and obviously everyone watching this, can kind of just converse amongst themselves and theorize and predict what goes on. You could tie in information from other parts of A World of Ice and Fire to sort of like link loosely what happened in at the fall of the Empire of Valyria, or what happened at the start. Basically, what caused Asshai to be the way it was. You could link certain things. Obviously, I just butchered the fuck out of that, but I think George left it so mysterious is because when he does come back and reveal more information about Asshai, more information about Euron and when's a winter in the Dream of Spring, it's not like something that someone could have easily picked up. I think it's something that he's allowing himself to explore further in future books, and that will make the mystery reveal so much better, because it's like this massive thing that, like, people were kind of expecting and we were kind of waiting for, but no one really saw it coming because, you know, when he reveals the mysteries, it'll be like at the most recent version in the timeline of his story. So it would tie other things together, and maybe that's what's taking these books so long, is that he writes books like these and, like, you know, kind of not necessarily writes himself into a corner, but it makes it way fucking harder to whip some shit out because you have to make sure you cover all your bases, which is why George hired Elio and Linda to sort of like fact check him. You know what I mean? They're co-authors. This world is fucking massive. But if you enjoyed this, I don't even know how long this is. This is probably like 20 or 30 minutes. If you enjoy this kind of content, let me know. I don't always make videos like this. I don't always show my ugly fucking mug in these videos. I try to do like a mix of them. So this one was obviously my podcast episode for this week, and the next one's going to be a no face cam, pictures only video. It'll either be House of the Dragon wins a winner or something Game of Thrones related. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Thank you so much for making it this far in this video. If you could, please do me those 3 massive favors. That's subscribe, slap a like on this video. The like goal is going to be 3, and then also the last most important thing is to turn your notifications all the way on, so that way you'll get an alert every single time I drop a Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, or World of Ice and Fire video throughout the wait for House of the Dragon Season 1, or any kind of more Game of Thrones content, or as it's known on this channel, the Long Night. Super special shout out to every single person watching and every member of my Patreon family over on patreon.com/SirHunsReviews. My name's Mark, and this has been Sirhun's Long Night Reviews. Oh, shit, edit that part, dude.